Well, hello, my friends from faraway places and local places. This is Jim the Keys Bartender coming to you from Key Largo, the Florida Keys, Monroe County. And I hope you're having a good day. I have a great day. I got everything I needed done so far today. There's always things that need to be done, right? There's always things you have to do. If you're a person, right? Unless you're one of those people that are independently wealthy and have everything taken care of for them, yeah, there's always things to do. I was discussing with someone the other day, we start out with the bartending thing, about terminology, and I always have to remind people about when they're ordering drinks. When you're ordering a drink, and I tell the server, I say, listen, it's not enough. And if someone's ordering a beer or a wine, and if it's draft beer, that's all you need to tell them. If they said, I'll have a Bud Light, I'll have a Miller Lite, I'll have whatever IPA, or a glass of wine, right? Unless they have a particular thing, they wanted a spritzer or a sangria or something like that, there's a need for further explanation. But normally for wine and beer, you don't need to explain it, right? But if you order almost anything else, and I'm talking about alcoholic drinks, I had someone order a Zacapa. And it wasn't the server was new, but the person that was ordering it just ordered, it's a rum. It's an añejo rum. Very good rum. And someone ordered it, and they just said the name of the rum. And I said, yes. And I go, was that neat? Neat means served at the room temperature in a glass, not chilled. No ice. Did they say it was on the rocks? There's a number of ways they could have wanted it. They could have made it, well, obviously he didn't say anything else, so he didn't want to mix. But it could have been on the rocks. It could have been chilled up or neat. And neat and up. Up means, for me, chilled. Neat means up, not chilled. And on the rocks means the ice. Well, I went to the table and I asked the gentleman, I go, you ordered that drink, how do you want it? He says, a couple ice cubes. That's all you had to do. That's all you had to do. You should see it. There's people that when they order a martini, and that was one of the first episodes, they said, people with martinis have a lot of instructions sometimes. You know, I'll have a Grey Goose martini, really light on the dry vermouth. I want a lemon twist. And once again, there's a lemon or lemon twist or lemon wedge, right? Well, if you say lemon, I'm assuming lemon wedge or a wheel, whatever you do. I actually like the wedge myself. The wheel looks nice, but it doesn't serve if people wanted to get extra lemon in there, right? The wedge acts as that transport for lemon juice, right? So you can squeeze it right in the drink if you like a little more lemon or lime or orange or whatever. So when you're ordering, complete the whole idea. If you don't want any temperature, just order it neat. If you want a little couple of cubes, have it cubes. If you want it chilled up, you do that. Same thing with almost like a rum and Coke. If you don't want a lime, no fruit, please. Some people say NFL. NFL means no fucking lime. Right? So you can just say no fruit. No fruit. You know, there's some drinks like a gin and tonic. It'll come with lime unless you, at 95% of the places you go to. When you order a vodka tonic, gin and tonic, rum and Coke, those drinks will come with lime. Just like a martini will come with olives. And if you want to say, I want a martini with pearl onions, well, that's a Gibson. Just, it makes it easier. But sometimes I understand people say, well, a martini with pearl onions. They don't want to say Gibson because, first of all, a vodka Gibson, unless you want a gin Gibson, because a martini, if someone says, I'm a martini, extra dry, they'll get a gin martini with very little vermouth, if any at all, chilled up in a glass with olives. If you want a Gibson, if you ordered a Gibson, you'd get the same martini except without the olives. You'll get it with the pearl onions. And if you ordered a gimlet, you get it with lime juice and hopefully a little bit of simple syrup. Unless you are adding Rose's lime juice. Just splash it out with a lime wedge. So that's the wisdom for today when it comes to the bar. When I woke up this morning, I'm watching the news and I noticed a trend, and the bigger trend I will get, but the thing that really struck me in the beginning of one commercial, it wasn't an actor portraying a doctor. It was a doctor. I think it was a cardiac surgeon. And he was talking about his practice. I guess his practice or the practice he belongs to. And he's there giving his flat delivery like a high-functioning savant. I didn't say idiot savant. I'm just saying a savant. You could tell the guy may not have that really great. It's funny because he doesn't seem to have, when you're talking to him, he didn't seem open and all that. He seemed very wooden. I can't imagine what he'd be like in front of a patient. But he had the bullet points where they had them CGI'd in front of him and he's pushing them away and all that stuff. He's wearing his lab coat. Looks very professional. But for some reason in the commercial for something like that, he wasn't talking about things in general. It was for his practice in particular. And that made a big impact on me because I'm thinking, man, I do not want to see my doctor on television in a commercial. I want to see him on television in a documentary or when they're saying, when they're talking about a hospital like Cleveland Clinic and they go like this, we have the best doctors at Cleveland Clinic or Johns Hopkins. And then they show a group of doctors or a single doctor and all that stuff. But I don't want to see the heart surgeon, the cardiac surgeon shilling for his practice. It's just the way I am. They said, why can't they do it? Everyone else does. Well, just because everyone else does it doesn't mean it's right. Okay? And it works for some people. I did mention a couple months back, there's a roofer in Miami, and it's Paul Bang, Bange. It could be Bang-E, but it looks like Paul Bang. Hi, I'm Paul Bang. And his commercial was Paul Bang Roofing. I'm Paul, give me a call. And I thought that was funny. I said, well, that's kind of surreal. I still would have it because they have the guy on there. He looks like a roofer. He acts like a roofer. I'm not saying acts like a roofer. You know what I mean. He's easygoing. He's definitely less wooden than the cardiac surgeon or the cardiac doctor. He looks like a guy saying, well, I could see this guy being on my roof. Obviously this guy would not be on the roof. He'd be supervising and stuff like that. He just sends his guys out. Probably has a huge crew if he can afford Miami airtime in, the 6 to 7 o'clock hour for people. That'd be the time people are watching the news and they got a leak in the ceiling. They said, man, we got to call a roofer. And they said, well, we get Paul, give him a call. That actually works. But the one thing I really noticed today was a plethora, assorted services on commercial. No products, services. And we're in the beginning of the Christmas season. You think people are showing it. Obviously, the car commercials, you're not going to see a ton of those because there's no inventory. There's no inventory. As soon as the cars come available, I think they're going to have them sold. Certain cars, there's cars on every lot. There's some cars on every lot. We don't know whose they are. They could have shitty options. They got to have a shitty option package. I sold cars and trucks years ago. And one guy came in for a Chevy heavy-duty truck with dual wheels on the dual tires in the back, and he was going to set up a drilling rig on the back of it. And it's funny, this guy looked like a Bill Wissinger, the guy that was on our podcast a couple of years ago, who was a regular on our podcast, or the co-host. But this guy was bigger. He was bigger than Bill. He was bigger than me. Big guy. And he ordered this truck. And it was a truck that no one would ever want. It had this heavy gear. Someone would want it, but it wouldn't be for mass. It wouldn't be a truck people would look for unless they had a specific need. And it had a huge engine. A lot of people have that. But the gearing made it particularly, not necessarily fast. It was just for towing heavy loads and doing heavy-duty work. And it was going to be a forest green with a utility bed in the back and a manual transmission. And my car manager at the time said, listen, if you're going to order that, he was a new car manager, he said, if you're going to order that, you better get a decent amount of deposit, because we're not going to, if it shows up on a lot, we're not going to get anything back. So this guy plops down, I don't know. Remember, this is back, well, you don't know yet. This was back in the late 80s. The late 80s. And, a truck was, that kind of truck would have been about, I'm thinking, about 20,000. So he put 2,500 on it. And there was room in it too. Profit. So they could have sold it. They could have still sold it for 15,000. Well, I only stayed for another 6 months. The guy never came and picked up the truck when it came in. Never came in. And I went by the dealership a year later, and the truck was still sitting on a lot. So, no matter even being able to offer a $2,500 additional discount over their, over what they own it for, they weren't able to sell it. And it must be those things right now. You get a shitty option package, something that it doesn't want. Who gets, is there a possibility of getting a car without electric windows? Certain cars, they don't offer the options of manual transmissions. Or how about I had someone want a car without air conditioning? Imagine having a car without air conditioning in this day and age. But this was, in the late 80s, someone wanted a Chevy Nova, which was back then made by Toyota for General Motors. And it was he ordered one without air conditioning. I couldn't understand it. He wouldn't explain it. It was only a $600 option back then. And it provides so much more than it costs, I know environmentally it could be that way, but air conditioning, especially down here. So you're thinking of inventory and stuff like that. So getting back to the thing about, we were initially talking about commercials. There's no products, it's all services. We got doctors, we have lawyers. Jesus Christ, the personal injury lawyers all over the place in Miami on the television. Different ones I never heard of. We pay the highest returns. And remember, we only get paid when you get your whatever, money or something like that. Which, I don't know, man. Doctors have a Hippocratic oath which say, first thing, do no harm. Don't make the patient worse than he was when you see him. Do no harm. Well, I know the lawyers have ethics codes, and to go on and promise people or show them that people they show people with big awards for accidents. They get real blatant. They said, before you see a doctor, call us. Before you see a doctor. Imagine that, the doctor's first thing you see. Before you before you take a settlement, talk to us. Because there could be unforeseen injuries that you don't know about yet. You might have pains that you don't feel any yet. Or what they're saying is that, don't be stupid, you stupid fuck. Sue the bastard, claim neck and back pain, loss of consortium rights. That was a big thing. I was served on a civil jury where this guy was trying to say, the wife said they were losing consortium rights. And I looked at the two people. I didn't think they had sex together. I don't know and I would need an accident not to want to be with, but I'm sorry about that. But the loss of consortium, that's a real thing. They say, well, I lost my ability to play a sport I really enjoyed. What was your sport? Poker. I can't, you can make up something. I can't sit in the folding chairs that they have. We use the same folding chairs that they use for the dogs. Okay. I get it. You want to get the biggest amount. You got to put an amount of things, how this accident affected you, and the pain and suffering you suffered, so you can return it. So your lawyer can get 50% or something. I don't know what they're doing. But yeah. So it's all services. You don't see as many products. Every so often you see a product. There's supermarkets. Fortunately, they have. I'm flexible with stuff like that. I don't know what it would be like if I had my stepdaughter was little and she wanted a toy that was in short supply. That would be, how do you explain to a 6-year-old? Well, sit down, little one. I want to explain to you about the supply chain economics. How your toy was initially made in Malaysia. But at this time, they don't have the resources to make those things, or they're fulfilling quotas that they haven't met yet, and they're playing catch up, and they didn't make it to the United States yet. All sorts of things. But you'll notice if you look this Christmas, you're going to see a lot of commercials for services. There's 1-800-MASSAGE, I think, or massage. There's an app for massage, well-being. You see apps, entertainment, concerts, things like that. But product, not as much products. You may say, well, there's one product. There's not the volume of commercials for products. Now it's a lot of times services, maintenance, and things like that. Like Paul Bang Roofing, the Cardiac Care Center, attorneys. I mean, eventually, I guess late at night, they'll have the Asian massage parlors, the palm readers. Gosh, your back alley cannabis dealer. When you say back alley cannabis dealer, I don't get why people still. I know people. I mean, there's still a lot of people that do pot, smoke pot, but with the advent of medical marijuana, at least here in Florida, and recreational medical in other states, I don't know how pot dealers stay in there. Why would they? People say, well, I've always been going to a pot dealer. And he says like that, so I don't want to have this. But what you're doing until they change the law is illegal. But if you get the your pot dealer is going to go out of business. They're going to have to diversify. They got to go to another legal substance. So that'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out with commercials, right? You can see if there. I don't think there's ever going to be like a drop in the lawyer commercials, right? About a week or two ago, I told you that one of our representatives in Monroe County say we're a small community and with a big reputation, the Florida Keys, because everyone, in the United States, most everyone knows the Florida Keys, and they have an image. And we're only year-round residents, around 90,000. Not a huge county. Area-wise, not a huge county population-wise. I mean, if you count the Everglades, it's a decent amount of land, right? But the land that people can live on, you can live in the Everglades and stuff like that. But I mentioned that we, like a lot of different communities, have been affected by COVID and, the fluctuations of the markets and the economy and real estate markets and all that stuff. So we have a lot of concerns nowadays. There's a rising cost to healthcare premiums. They've gone up, especially since COVID-19. In coastal communities, wind and flood insurance has gone up dramatically with the increase in tropical storms and things like that. So the more storms you have, the more claims you have. And when there's more claims, there's less reserves that the insurance company has. So they raise the premium. Okay? So that's it. We have roads that need to be taken care of. The overseas highway leaving Key Largo, I hate to say it, is in shitty condition for a relatively new road. And being in the subtropics, we don't have the huge fluctuation in temperature or salt or any chemicals that they need to put down. They don't have to put chemicals down for ice or anything here. So the roads should last longer if they're made correctly. But for some reason, we have it's just as bad as potholes as you get in a place like, let's say, Indiana. Now, Overseas Highway, they built it on, I think, crushed coral rock fill. And, there's still a lot of vacant spots there. So that when that settles, you get some decent holes there. And it's just like a very patchy, potholey road. Horrible. And even as you go through the Keys. So that's one thing. I sound like I'm bitching and stuff like that. Well, I am kind of. So far we got that. Rising premiums of that. We have, the roads. We do have a rising crime rate here. Or incidents of reported crime. I don't know. It's just higher rates of crime. And it only works if they're reported, right? Because if you don't report the crime. So that's gone up. There's a shortage of employees. That could be brought about. The shortage, you can may be able to point the finger at affordable housing, the lack of the amount of affordable housing you need to have a workforce down here. That's why we have a bus system. We have an impromptu bus system that comes down here and brings workers. But since there's shortage of workers, there's probably less people on that bus. I'm wagering there is because there's a lot of restaurants that can't go back to full hours because they don't have enough staffing. So, there's staffing levels. There's affordable housing. There's flooding. We got flooding. There's low-lying areas. And for whatever reason, I don't want to piss off anybody because some people don't believe in global warming. They just mean the water's higher. But these neighborhoods that were built years ago, their roads are going underwater during the high tides in the fall here, late fall. And they can't drive it's salt water, so they can't drive their cars to it. It causes corrosion. So there's that. Christ, what else we have? Well, we have traffic. We have, in Key Largo, we have uninterrupted growth, unhindered growth. Because we really don't have, it's only the county that really handles that. And Key Largo's unincorporated, meaning, or it's not a municipality. So they don't really have a government for Key Largo. It's part of the county. The county administers that. So we have really unrestricted growth here. They say, oh yeah, there are rules. There are 1, 2, 3. I mean, there's a house being built behind me. It's been being built for years. And up the street, when I talk about the street, less than 75 yards or 100 yards towards the highway from my house, there's 2 houses being built. The property across the street is being subdivided into from one big lot into 4 small lots. So they're probably going to build there too. So they cut down these trees that are here. So we have relatively few trees. And they keep on building these homes. Though the highways and the peak, when you add into the mix, when there's only 90,000 people down here, it gets busy at rush hour, and, or when kids are out of school, and when they're going into school, right? I got that backwards, but that's the way it is. Well, adding more people in the mix year round, yeah, it'd be great right now in November, but once December rolls around, if you have a 10% growth of the economy, the roads aren't any bigger. The roads aren't any bigger. And there's only an increasing amount of highway deaths, and it's a very dangerous highway down here in the Keys. So you got that. So I listed a bunch of things, and I'm sure there's other things. I'm sure there's tons of other things. But on the front page, out of all these things, the county takes aim at iguanas. Okay. And there's other problems that the county has, and I don't think iguanas would make it into my top 20. Yeah, they shit on your car. They'll eat your vegetables, destroy your garden. But all those other things are the things that really get you. Iguanas, they're an invasive species. I understand that. But why would you make that your keynote feature when there's so many other problems? To say, listen, I would say, iguanas are a problem. We're going to try to eradicate them on county lands because that's all they can do. They're not allowed to go in there onto other people's property necessarily, or they can, but they won't do it, but they can guarantee that have people walking on. I don't think you can get people to go on there because some people keep iguanas as pets. So if someone went into a yard and killed an iguana, that would be some interesting lawsuit. The state killed my pet because they decided that it was part of the problem, and it's not illegal to have them as a pet, right? It's just illegal to have them in the wild. So it's just interesting. The front page of the Free Press. That's what we have, and they don't say it sarcastically. They don't say it sarcastically. They're saying the county takes aim at that. They'll eventually put an article in that people at Steel Right Point can't. Friends of mine that live in Steel Right Point, they came into the bar last week. I think it was Wednesday night. The mother is a hairstylist, and the son is a high school student. I guess he's a high school student, junior, senior. And they're allowed to sit at the bar. It's all right. I mean, it was for dinner. So they're talking. They're talking about the flooding in their neighborhood where they have to take one of those, what do you call, paddle boards. Paddle boards or boats. Because it's about 8 inches to 10 inches of water. 12 inches of water. And it gets deeper. They said, actually for her, she said it was above her knees. So you can't drive your car through salt water. You shouldn't drive your car through salt water. It'd be like, so some people do it. I know some people do it and they just trade it in. I'm like, you got to be careful down here. If you're buying a car in South Florida, look for salt water damage because these low-lying areas, people are. I've gone through puddles that I shouldn't have because I didn't know how deep they were. So, obviously when a car goes so deep that the engine gets compromised, then you're totally screwed with that. I mean, it can still happen like that. But you could see how these people for weeks and weeks and weeks, they can't park their car. They can't make it down the street and park their car because they don't want to get salt water. Some people even have a spray system they put on so they can rinse off the undercarriage of their car when they go through that. You know, and some people have jacked up vehicles. There's guys that have these Jeeps with the if you're a hunter or people that are in boggy areas, you'll see these. Their exhaust comes right out the front of the rear of the hood on a Jeep, and it goes above the ceiling of the passenger part. So they put it way up so your Jeep could get with having that tailpipe, that place, that they're going to be able to go into the water without having to worry about sucking that stuff in. So they build those there for some people just live down here. They get trucks that are jacked up just so they can get in their neighborhood. And then they got to park their cars at the closest place they're allowed to park the car. Remember, we're an island. There's not additional space. So that's a serious problem. And it's a big issue. It's really, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. There's nothing really to do. They could do mitigation by they could do one other thing. Raising the roads. Very expensive proposition. Plus, it increases some of the compensatory kind of, if the flooding gets high, it could trap the water on the other side too, the roads. So you got to do drainage underneath maybe and stuff like that. So it gets really expensive raising the roads. You could do flood mitigation by putting barriers up. Also expensive, but not as expensive as raising the roads. They put these big inflatable things in the neighborhood. But what happens is when you have sustained water, it bubbles up underneath. You know, you have to have a thick dike system like they have in Holland. And that's what they keep the ocean away with that. And there's some places that they did that. They started doing that in the 1700s in order to reclaim farmlands and stuff like that. They say, you know what, when it's dry, we better start building something to keep it when the water gets high. And they did that. Here, it was just temporary. And people go like this, well, this happens all the time. I dispute that because some of these houses are old houses, been here 70 years, right? Since the 1950s. And they're built in neighborhoods that have been around for a while. And no one would build, there's higher places in the Keys that were developed later. So these people, they didn't build a place that every so often flooded, every so often frequently, every year flooded. Probably one of these things when a storm came in or something like that. Yeah, they had some flooding when a storm, but what are you going to do about a storm, right? But a regular flooding event because of high tide, it's crazy. So focusing on an invasive species, and just the state of Florida and the county has a program to eradicate the Burmese python. That's an invasive species down here. Right? And they have a series where they send these people into the Everglades and stuff like that. And they started doing it a while back, at least 5 years ago. And you know what's all over the place still down here? Burmese pythons. Now, Burmese pythons, if you had a run-in with a Burmese python, there's a possibility that you may not be coming home. So I can see the eradication of Burmese pythons, big deal. Now, iguanas, people say, well, you could die from iguanas. You can get salmonella from the skin. Oh, don't fucking lick the iguana. Or it shits on your car and it could obstruct your view. So, okay. You got your things. Stuff like that. And it eats all my flowers. Eats my flowers. Oh, and it eats eggs. Birds' eggs. And you go, oh, okay. So you're worried about the birds and stuff like that, which is good. I'm worried about the birds. I don't like all the pesticides they use that actually hurt them and stuff like that. But I can go for that. But they're not really concerned about the birds. I don't think they are. And like I said, those other problems that were mentioned, moves that iguana problem right to the... It's like if you have... I'm watching this show, Life of Crime, this documentary. It's on... I think it's on HBO Max. It was over the course of 36 years. It's three... And I mentioned it yesterday. It follows three people over 36 years. And they were thieves and they were drug addicts. And you're just following them and seeing what they were doing. And following it right up to today. And I'm going to watch it as soon as I watch this show. But the one guy, I don't know if he was a primary character, but this one guy, okay, yeah, he was. Billy, I think his name was Billy Monahan or something like that. He is at a friend's party or something like that. And it's just his cohort in crime. One of his co-thieves and heroin addicts and stuff like that. I mean, other than that, it seemed like decent guys. But it's a different world. That's why it's a documentary. It makes it interesting. Like this. I'm not used to... I don't really hang out with people like that. I may have known them, but I didn't hang out with them like that, where they were going, hey, I want to go and do a line or shoot a line, do a shot of heroin in the bathroom. That wasn't a part of my thing. Now, the person could have went and done the shot of heroin in the bathroom. You just didn't know it. They didn't tell you they were going to do it. And say, hey, I'm going to go and score some heroin. Oh, okay. No, but this guy had a girlfriend, and she was pregnant, which was a serious problem, right? And he starts, it was horrible in the documentary, he starts beating up on the girlfriend who's pregnant, who later became a prostitute at truck stops, right? He was beating the shit out of her. And then all of a sudden, he started talking about her problem. He says, listen, you shouldn't be saying that stuff about this stuff, the thing. That's your biggest problem. That's your biggest problem. That you mentioned the gift or something like that. Something silly he was mad about. Shouldn't talk about. That's not her biggest problem. Not nearly. Her biggest problem is that the father of her kid, or maybe the father of her kid, is a total asshole. And a heroin addict thief. That there's a bunch of problems other than someone that can't keep a secret about a gift or something like that. So, I mean, you really got to step back, because a lot of times there's not going to be anybody. The Humane Society doesn't believe that they should be cruel. You shouldn't kill invasive species like the iguana cruelly. And I agree with him. You got to be effective, and you got to kind of curtail these invasive species, but it's going to be hard to really eradicate them. We have everything they want. We got birds, we got food, they got fruit trees. Iguanas are going to be around for a while. You're not going to be able to get rid of them. I mean, you might be able if you pour all the resources you would to protect the roads, the schools, or I didn't even put the schools. How about the schools? You can throw the schools in, the teachers, the housing, and all that stuff. So you could take all that money from those and police protection, take all that extra money and put it into iguana eradication. And you know what? You still wouldn't get rid of the iguana. I'd like to thank you guys for listening. This is Jim the Keys Bartender. Thanks again for downloading as many episodes as you can. I get a little heat sometimes for the shows I do down here, because the powers that be don't really like that when I point out that, environmentally, that the cruise ships aren't necessarily... It's good for business, the cruise ships for Key West, but it's not necessarily good for the environment. So, I mean, it could be selfish. So, what? Fuck the environment. No, I don't. No, I don't think you should fuck the environment. Because we got to live in it, right? So, but thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for downloading the episodes. Keep that up. It's getting our rankings up. It's getting our numbers up. The more numbers we have, the more exposure we get, and the more revenue it generates. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, send your questions to jim@keysbartender.com. Thank you very much, and have a great day. Bye.